There we go. And we're going to go through this PowerPoint presentation that I've got on screen here. And I'm also going to show you an example CV as we go along as well. Okay. So without further ado, let me give you a little bit of information about who we are, because I think it's important that you know who you're talking to. So obviously my name's Matt Craven. You probably figured that out already. I work for an organization called the CV and Interview Advisors, and I've done lots of things in my career. I've operated at senior management level. I've been a headhunter. I've done everything from junior temps all the way through to exec headhunting. I do a lot of international speaking. I'm considered to be a resident expert for a number of organizations, and I act as a consultant to a number of leading recruitment businesses. So I immerse myself in this world, and I do a lot of work with lots of organizations, including the IAB. And then my company, the CV and Interview Advisors, we've been around since 2006. I've got 14 guys work for me, based all over the world, believe it or not. A couple of people in Spain, a few in North America, someone in Canada, and a bunch of guys throughout the UK. We pride ourselves on being the UK's highest quality provider of CV writing services. My team, incidentally, they're either from kind of coaching backgrounds. We've got some people who are certified CV writers, but a lot of them come from industry, and they have quite a lot of experience up to senior management level in industry-based roles. So people who've been chief execs, people who've been operations directors, people who've been sales and marketing directors, that sort of caliber of person. That's who works for us. And one of the things that's really important about me and my team is that we know what the hot skills are in your marketplace. I spent, about 6 years of my life recruiting people into accountancy roles. So I'm very knowledgeable in that area. There's not an awful lot I don't know about that area. I'm not a qualified accountant, of course, but I do understand accountancy extremely well. I'm just going to drop some nuggets in at the bottom of each page, which you might find quite interesting. Obviously, we write CVs for people. That's what pays the rent and keeps the beans on toast on the table. But we do have a very, very good track record, and typically people who invest in CV writing services, they receive a significant uplift in the number of interviews that they get as a result of having a CV professionally written. So it's a damn good investment. Okay, good stuff. So let's move on to the next slide. Might be a rather strange question. What is a CV? Because most people probably think they know what a CV is. In my opinion, I think that most people don't know what a CV is, and certainly the people that I speak to get it all wrong. Because your average person thinks that a CV is a list of jobs, a list of qualifications, a list of contact details, generally a list of where you've worked and what you did in each role. Now, that's got to be part of it. I agree. But if that's all your CV is, you're going to be struggling to get interviews. Here's an interesting point for you. If CVs at large provide people with the information that they're looking for, why is it that lots of employers ask people to fill out application forms? Ask yourselves, why do they need the application form? If CVs in general gave them the information that they needed, why is it that they ask people to fill out application forms? Well, the reason is because CVs don't give them the information they need. I did some consultancy work recently with a company who basically came to me and said, Matt, we just can't get the right people. Really, really struggle to get the right people. And then they went on to tell me that every time they advertise for a job, they get all these terrible CVs through, probably from people who think they've got a good CV. And they say, we just can't tell whether these people are good or bad or indifferent by reading their CV. It just doesn't tell us. We're just not getting the information we need. First thing I said to them, well, you've got to just implement an application form then. Dictate the information that they give you by, asking them to fill out an application form. So that's why employers do it. I quite regularly ask people in seminars, usually when I'm doing face-to-face seminars, who's using the same format they did when they left school or college or university or whatever. Usually half the room puts their hand up. And a big chunk of people are still using the same style CV that they had when they left school. They're much senior in their career. And also life's moved on, you know, trends and things have moved on, yet they're still stuck with this idea of what a CV should be, you know, sometimes 25 years down the line, and it's not working for them. I have a little motto here that a CV should present a business case that explains why someone should hire you. Now that might seem a bit far-fangled to you, but I assure you it's not. If you are just telling people where you worked and what you did in each role, how are they going to know that you're any good? How are they going to know that you are a good bookkeeper compared to one of those people who's not a good bookkeeper? Because there are people out there who aren't very good at what they do. How will they ever know if you don't tell them? And that's why we'd say to you, your CV needs to be transformed from this idea of it being a list to something that's more akin to a business case that's saying, right, guys, this is why you should hire me. Here's all about my track record and all the good things I've done in my career. It should definitely be more of a sales and marketing document. So a bad CV is a list, a good CV is a business case. The other thing that's important, and we'll cover this in a bit, is you've got to have keywords in the CV now, because a big chunk of the recruitment process is automated. So if your CV is not coming up in keyword searches, it's not going to be working for you. I love this statistic down here. At the bottom of the page, and I'm going to say it twice, 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decision on the contents of your CV alone. I'm just going to say that again. 92% of shortlisting decisions are made on the contents of your CV alone. There's no telepathy. There's no osmotic force. There's no higher being saying to the world how great you are. If your CV is not communicating that you're good at your job and that you have all the skills and experience that your future employer is looking for, they will never know, because your CV is the only thing they have to go on. Okay? So your CV is the most important thing. And the reason I say that is because I regularly speak to people who will tell me that they're the greatest bookkeeper or accountant or project manager or HR manager or marketing person on earth. I'm great at what I do. I can't believe it. I apply for these jobs and I just don't hear back. How can that be? And I'm saying to them, well, how do these people know how great you are? And they kind of sit there and they think to themselves, well, I sent them my CV, but does your CV say how great you are? Or is it just a list of jobs? It's just a list of jobs. Then how do they know how great you are? I guess they won't, will they? Exactly. Penny drops. And it's at that point they do something different and get better results. So it's a really important lesson there. Just before I move on to the next slide, I'm just going to click the chat box, see if we've got any questions. Can you all just pop in the chat box or in the questions that you're all there and you're all still okay and you've not fallen to sleep on your keypad yet? Good stuff. A couple of people still there. Everybody else still there? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, fabulous, fabulous. Okie dokie, great stuff. Well, let's move on to the next slide. So, what have we got here? The professional summary. Now, I've got this little thing on my dashboard here. I can actually see what you guys can see. And I can see in the top right-hand corner here that there's a pair of cheap red shoes. Now, you're probably all thinking to yourselves now, what on earth is Matt talking about? Why is he talking about cheap red shoes? Well, let me explain. Cheap red shoes. Now, I'm just going to pretend that tomorrow you're all going to wake up as a consequence of listening to my webinar. And tomorrow you're all going to have a burning desire to buy a pair of cheap red shoes. So what you're probably going to do is jump on the internet and you're going to go to Yahoo or Bing or Google or whatever it is, and you're going to type in cheap red shoes. Or you might put in, I would like to buy cheap red shoes, or buy cheap red shoes, something along those lines. What will happen is a load of search results will come up. And it may be that an advert pops up and says, we sell shoes of all colours and prices. Click here. And you'll probably think to yourself, well, that's pretty close to what I searched on, but it's not exact. And you haven't told me specifically that you sell cheap red shoes. So you know what? I'm not going to click on your advert because there's one over here that says we sell cheap red shoes. And that's exactly what I was searching for. So that's the website that I'm going to click on. Now, this is no different to the way a recruiter or a hiring manager thinks. If I'm looking for an IAB qualified bookkeeper with extensive knowledge of bookkeeping to trial balance, with additional knowledge of management accounts, then I want to know you're one of them. I don't want to know that you're a finance professional with experience across most areas of accountancy. You know, that doesn't tell me anything. It's so ambiguous and woolly. I have no idea what you are. But if you tell me that you are a bookkeeper and that you can do bookkeeping to trial balance, and you can also do management accounting, then all of a sudden I'm like, yes, fantastic. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to read on. And that's what I call the cheap red shoes theory. Now, I think that's pretty straightforward. Where we get a little bit more technical is when we start talking about things like value propositions. And I'm going to show you an example in a minute, which will hopefully help. But the value proposition, and by the way, let me just show you a CV up on screen, okay? This is my CV. There you go. That should have popped up on your screen now, okay? This is my CV, and you can see I've got my name at the top. I've got a little drawing tool I can use here. There we go. My name at the top. There we go. And then we have this summary here. Now, this is what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about the professional summary. I've called myself a senior manager and career coach, blah, 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 blah. So that's the cheap red shoes bit. If I scroll down the page, bear with me. I go back to there we go. So if I go down the page, we've got this expertise section here. And then we've got these career highlights here. We're going to go through all these sections individually. Very exciting stuff. We've got the career history next. And you'll notice that in the career history, we've got lots of achievements. Loads of them. Fantastic. Previous job. I'm sure you guys have all heard of Hayes. I used to work for Hayes. I worked for them when they were quite good. Apparently they're not so good anymore. I don't think it was as a result of me leaving, but I think they've gone downhill. My earlier career, education and memberships, personal details, and recommendations. So that is my CV, and that's a bit of a visual interpretation of what we're talking about today. So I'm just going to scroll back up to the top, and then I'm going to now go back to the presentation. Okay, good stuff. So what have we been talking about? We've been talking about value propositions. Okay, so what is the value proposition? So let me describe it this way. Your value proposition is what I describe as being that one thing that you are really, really good at, you know, that kind of real standout reason why somebody might buy your services. So let's think about me. What's my value proposition? Well, my value proposition is that I'm an expert in helping my clients to develop high-impact personal branding documentation, including CVs and LinkedIn profiles, that really help people to get more interviews. Yeah, so that's my value proposition. My wife's in the fitness industry. She might tell you that her value proposition is developing leading-edge exercise programs that enhance the performance of professional athletes. Our marketing manager, Carolyn, she might tell you that her value proposition is all about developing low-cost, maybe even recession-busting marketing strategies that help small companies to achieve better return on investment from their marketing budgets. it's kind of the kind of key thing that we do. It's that one thing that we offer. It's the purpose of our professional existence. Now, it sounds awfully technical, doesn't it? But that's what you're going to try and capture in line 1 of your CV. Okay. Now, once you've done that, what you're then going to try and do is talk about some of the skills you have that match up with the hot skills in your marketplace. There are definitely hot skills. If you're a finance manager, you definitely want to be talking about managing people. Yeah. If you are, if you're a management accountant, for the sake of argument, then there are certain things you want to be talking about. Like, for example, developing reporting capability might be really key. If you operate in credit control, for example, you might want to talk about things like putting in place credit control strategies in order to reduce debtor days. That's kind of one of the key things that you'd be asked to do. And what you want to do is try and write them in a features and benefits way. And I'll talk about this when I read this example. So this is an example. So if I just go back to my CV again, just to make sure you understand where this goes. Okay. So this is the top bit here. I've called it an executive summary on my CV. You might call it a professional summary on your CV. Okay, it might take a little while for it to flash up on screen, but here it is now. So it's this bit here, this bit at the top that we've called an executive summary. You would call it a professional summary. Okay. So we'll go back to the presentation now. There we go. So just wait for you all to come back online and join me looking at my screen. I can see how many of you are seeing it and how many aren't. At the moment, 94% of you can see my screen and 6% of you can't. Those 6% of you probably have a slow internet connection. Oh, there you go. Now 100% of people can see my screen. I can give you a running commentary with this, can't I, guys? Okay, so I'm going to read you this example now, okay? So this is something I made up earlier. We described this made-up person as an IAB qualified bookkeeper / finance manager with a track record of streamlining financial processes. Oh, I've made a spelling error there. How terrible. You can tell I was in a rush to get this done earlier. With a track record of streamlining financial processes to drive effective production of both financial and management accounts. Okay? So that's what this person is. So this is the cheap red shoes theory, and their value proposition is streamlining financial processes to drive effective production of both financial and management accounts. Okay? So what are their key value-added skills? What are they particularly good at? Well, we talked about them being able to develop finance systems to efficiently produce highly accurate accounts to trial balance. We talked about them being able to create robust reporting capability and produce monthly management accounts that aid business decision making. So we've done features and benefits on that one. We've also talked about assembling and managing finance teams of up to 10 people across purchase ledger, sales ledger and credit control areas. And we've talked about running large payrolls for up to 150 employees, including subcontractor payments within the construction industry. You can see the most powerful one of those. It's that second one, isn't it? Creating robust reporting capability and producing monthly management accounts that aid business decision making. And this first one, the value proposition, was about streamlining financial processes to drive effective production of both financial and management accounts. So that's what we mean by features and benefits. It doesn't work for all of them, but it works for a lot of them. Good. Okay, so that's the professional summary. That's the bit that sits at the top. Well, quick word of caution. Don't use random skills, okay? You've got to align what you're talking about with your marketplace. Don't use fancy words over substance, yeah? We're pretty good at using fancy words, but it's not about fancy words. It's about actually the message that you're delivering. Content is the most important thing. And of course, this is what we're really good at. This is where we earn our money. We help people with all this stuff. So people often look at us and think, oh, you're a writing company, you know, a bit like when I left university 20 years ago and wrote in pen and paper my CV. and I took it to the local secretarial services company and asked them to type it up and print me 10 copies. Remember, at the time it cost me £34. I remember thinking it was a load of money at the time. Interestingly, quite a lot of people ring us up and ask us about our services and think it's going to cost them £34, even though we spend about a day, start to finish, writing people's CV. And the reason it takes us that long is because all these things we've just spoken about, we don't just kind of ask you a few random questions or ask you to fill out a questionnaire. We actually talk to you in detail about what you are, about what your value proposition is, about what your key skills are, and about all the other things that we're going to talk about tonight. And as a result, we then have really good things to write about. So the content is really, really important, and we have to work really hard to get good content from our customers because they don't always give it to us naturally. And here's a thing to think about. I've already told you that people who invest in CV writing services get a significantly better result when they're applying for jobs. Think of it this way. All the companies that you guys work for or have worked for, think about those companies. If they had homemade websites, you know, something that somebody knocked up using one of these kind of website builder packages, do you honestly think that these companies would have been successful? Of course they wouldn't. People would see it a mile off. People would wonder whether they were a truly professional outfit. So companies obviously invest in proper, professionally prepared websites. Doesn't it seem obvious then that you guys as job seekers should go down the same route? Do you want to be akin to one of those organizations that builds its own website using one of these online website building packages that just looks a bit naff? Or do you want to be one of the people that decides to invest in what is probably the most important document that you'll ever own? And I'm working on the assumption that your job's important to you. You know, if it's not, then who cares? But if your job's important to you, which I assume it is, then, as we've said earlier, 92% of decisions are made on your CV and nothing else, or at least the shortlisting phase is. So it stands to reason your CV is absolutely critical to getting an interview. And if it is just a list, well, you know what's going to happen. All right, good stuff. So we're going to speak about Arnie in a minute. But before I do so, I'm just going to check that you are all still there. You all still there, guys? Give me a yes or a no, I'm asleep or something. Let me know that you're all still out there. I've got some yeps and some yays and some yeses and whatnot. So that says to me that we're onto a winner there, which is always good. Thank you, guys. Because you realise I am just literally sat here in my office talking to Arnie. Yeah, it's very uninteractive for me, which is kind of a bit difficult to get used to. But once you've done, I've done probably about 100 of these now, so I'm pretty used to talking to myself. First sign of madness anyway, so yeah. Okay, good. So why have I got Arnie on screen? Well, I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the Terminator films, but if you are, you'll know that what happened is the machines took over the world. And poor old Arnie here, bless his heart, they beamed him back in time. And what he had to do is basically go and save the world from the machines. Now, I'm not saying that the machines have taken over the world just yet, but they certainly have a big part to play in the recruitment process. So what I'm talking about here is that keywords are important. Somebody somewhere will be doing keyword searches on your CV. Your CV is going to sit somewhere. It's going to sit on a recruitment database. It's going to sit on a job board. It's going to exist within an applicant tracking system. Somewhere your CV is in a database, and people are going to be searching for keywords on that database. And if you don't have these keywords on your CV will not come up in the searches and no one will ever call you. So you've got to make sure that you have keywords on your CV. I like to describe it as search engine optimizing your CV, because if anybody knows about internet marketing, you'll know that the holy grail of internet marketing is to get on page 1 of Google through the natural rankings, and that's all about getting the right keywords linking to your website, so when people type these keywords into Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever it is, your website comes up. That's search engine optimization. So you might have a list of things on your CV. This might just take a couple of seconds to come up on your screen, but we're talking about things like this: bookkeeping to trial balance, management accounts, financial process re-engineering, sales and purchase ledger, bank recs, IT implementations, intercompany accounts, payroll. Whatever it is that you do, stick it in this list. If I just go back to my CV, okay, none of you can see it just yet. Very 50%, 100% can see it. There we go. You're all seeing it. Fantastic. So it is this section here, what I've called expertise. You could call it key skills, doesn't matter. But you would have, what have I got in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've got 14 things in there. And those 14 things would be the key things that I would want to get across to a future employer. You would want to get those 14 things populated with what you consider your key skills to be. Okay? And you can change that depending on the role you're applying for, and make sure strategically that the things you've got in that box are the things that are on the job spec. Okay? Right, we'll go back to the presentation. Here we go. Wait for it, wait for it. There we go. Still 6% of you are a bit slow. But there we go. 94% of you are looking at it. 6% still aren't. I think that's pretty straightforward. So we'll now move on. So the next screen. Now here we have Pat Sharp from Pat and Mick. I don't know how many of you remember the 80s, but Pat Sharp's a real blast from the 80s. And Pat had fantastic highlights. Now, we're going to talk about highlights, but we're not going to talk about hair highlights. We're going to talk about career highlights. Now, what are career highlights? Now, career highlights are the highlights of your career. And what we do is we pick your 3 biggest and best achievements you've had in your career, and we stick them on page 1. The reason we do that is to front load your CV with all the fantastic, juicy stuff. These career highlights are basically little case studies. So what we're doing is we're taking what might be your typical 1-2-liner achievements that you might have, and we're elevating them onto page 1, and we're writing them as little case studies. And we use a little formula called STAR. This is an example from my career. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to show you the CV, and you can see where they go. But I used to work for a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And the situation is that they'd acquired an unprofitable competitor in the south of England that required transformation. Okay, so that's the situation. What was my task? Well, I was appointed as operations manager to rebrand the business, embed the enterprise business model, and drive productivity. Drive profitability. Okay. So how did I do it? What were my actions? Well, I performed a top-to-bottom review of the business. I exited underperforming staff. I recruited a new team. I trained them. I oversaw an office refurb. I introduced radical changes to their commercial model. So I introduced a 7-day-per-week operation. Seemed like a fantastic idea at the time until I had no social life at all. And I was working all hours. But anyway, it did well for the business. And I led business development activity. And the result is that I succeeded in rebranding the business and achieving a 10K per month profitability within 6 months. Now, you guys may have different ones. Of course you will. You're bookkeepers. You're not like me. You're not an ops manager. You don't do what I do. I remember doing a CV when I used to write CVs personally it was a chap who worked for a company, and he was a bookkeeper. And he said when he joined the company, they had really, really terrible processes, and every month they had about 10 hours of payroll queries that stem from A, making payroll errors, and B, there was no kind of formal channel for these payroll queries to come through. So he said, look, this is crazy. and he decided to implement better processes, and he actually introduced a new system, changed all the processes and rolled it out to everyone in the company. And I think what happened is it reduced every month the payroll queries from about 10 hours to about 2 hours. So an 80% reduction. And, you know, it's not on a grand scale, but I thought that was excellent. And it really demonstrated that this guy cared, he was able to make a difference, and wasn't just going in and doing the 9 to 5. He was actually making a difference and adding value. So that, written as a case study on page 1, is really powerful. So let me show you where these go. Okay, so my CV again. So just waiting for that to flash up on screen. There we go. So you should all be coming online very shortly, and you should be able to see these career highlights. Just give you a couple of minutes for that to flash up, or a few seconds, whilst I just take a quick sip of water. Good stuff. So all of you can see that now. I know you can see it because it's telling me, my wonderful systems here is telling me that 100% of you can see these career highlights. So this is where they go on the CV. Yeah, I've got 3 of them. They're really powerful. And what it allows us to do is to front load the CV with all your biggest achievements you've had in your career. And we can strategically align those with the roles that you're applying for. It's a really, really powerful thing to do. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. There we go. Sorry guys, my screen has just frozen there. Let's get you back. Oh, you're all still there. Come out the slideshow. We'll go back into the slideshow now. Don't know what happened there, but we'll get you back. Don't worry. Where are we? We are on the career highlights. We just finished the career highlights, hadn't we? So there we go. Just let you catch up. So just a little nugget at the bottom of the page here, because a lot of people tell me that they're not getting jobs because of the recession. I've heard that a lot over the last few years. Funnily enough, over the last 2 years, there's been 2 million live jobs in the UK. There's a lot of jobs out there. The problem is there's a lot of competition for those jobs, and you need to make sure that you're absolutely spot on, you know, that you tick every box. But the problem most people have is that they go into market with what they think's quite a tidy, well-written CV. If you ever spend some time talking to recruiters and hiring managers, they'll tell you a completely different story. They will tell you that most CVs they see are just awful. So you don't actually have to do that much to get head and shoulders above everybody else. Problem is everybody's cottoning on to the idea that having a professionally written CV is a good idea. So a lot of your competition have gone down that route already. So you're kind of catching up sometimes. But anyway, let's move on to the next slide. So a quick word of caution. If the examples that you present in this career highlights section are weak, it just highlights failure. They've got to be relevant and targeted. That's really important. They've got to be quantifiable. You've got to find the KPI. So when you're talking, like that guy who'd reduced the payroll queries from 10 hours to 2 hours, so a reduction of 80%, you can see how we use statistics there. And those statistics are a lot more powerful than just saying things were more efficient and payroll queries reduced. We actually used actual statistics. It makes it more believable. Of course, this is where we earn our money. This is what we're really good at. You know, a lot of people don't know what their biggest achievements are. They need help. They don't know what an appropriate case study would look like. They don't know what the results would be. They don't know what their value proposition is. They don't know what their hot skills are. You know, what we do is we're not writers, although, well, we are, but by default, we are very good at writing in actual fact, you know. But what we're really good at is extracting all this information from our customers and making sure that what's written in the CV is aligned with the marketplace in which people operate. So yeah, there you go. All right, quick, what time is it? It's 10 to 8. We're doing pretty well on time, pretty well indeed. So let's have a look at the career history. Now, why have I got this picture here of a architect's drawing? Okay, well, that's because it's all about the information architecture of your CV. It's all about the flow of information. Most people, the flow of information is just utterly random. The first bullet point is just random. The second is random. The third is random. It's just literally a brain dump on paper of everything you do in the role without any thought. What you've got to do, well, importantly, it needs to be in reverse chronological order. I'm sure you know that, but start with the most recent job and work backwards. You need to try and get your current role on page 1. The reason you need to do that is because, if I go back to my CV, a lot of people will go from here, and I'm pointing at the professional summary at the top. They'll go from here, they'll read this first bit, they'll read your name first, then they'll read here, then they're just literally going to scroll all the way down to job number 1, because they want to know what you're doing now, where you're working, what your job title is, and how long you've been there. So they'll miss out all that stuff in the middle. But the problem is, if they're on page 2 now, well, they're kind of on page 2. Let's scroll down to page 2, right? So we're on page 2 now. If I'm on page 2, why would I go back? Because I can't see page 1 anymore. It's kind of I'm what's called below the fold. I'm on a new screen. So I wouldn't naturally go back to page 1 because I'm on page 2. So I'm just going to carry on reading down the page. But if I've got here and the career history starts on page 1, then I will probably go back and read the rest of page 1. And that's what you want people to do. So that's really important. And I've done, and our CVs, by the way, they're based on 3 things. A hell of a lot of research, both primary and secondary. Also a deep knowledge of the recruitment industry. And also the psychology of how people read documents, plus all the marketing principles that feed into a CV. So there's 4 things there, isn't there? So I've done quite a lot of research using eye tracking software to see where people go, where they look, where they home in on the CV, and how they navigate through the information. And once you know what they're looking for and what order they're looking for it for, you can then make sure that you give them the information in that order so they can just read down the page. It takes years of research to do that, and we've really mastered that, which is why our CVs are incredibly effective. Okay. So what next? So you give a description of the employer. That's really important because not everybody knows who your employer is. They don't know what they do. So give a description of your employer. Give a summary of the role. I've just lost you again, Nice. I'm just going to get you back. Hopefully you can still hear me. But for some reason, when I left click, I lose the, you can't see what I can see. I've got like a control panel on the right hand side of my screen. But for some reason, when I right click, I sometimes lose you guys and I can't see whether you're still there or not, which is a bit annoying really. But anyway, the wonders of technology, eh? So where are we? We're on the career history. So we've just talked about being reverse chronological, starting on page 1. And then, yes, give a description of the employer. That's really, really important, okay? Because you might work for a company that's, you might think, yeah, it's a big company, it's successful, it's market leader, it's got 100 employees, but someone else might not have heard of it. And unless you tell them, they might assume it's just a 2-person band working out of someone's back bedroom. How would they know any different? Structure of team. Okay, so if you manage people, what I'm saying here is tell them how many people you manage and who your direct reports are, and I'll show you an example of how that might work in a minute. Tell them how your role is measured. That's another important thing. If I know how your role's measured, if you're a credit controller and you tell me that you're measured on the debtor days, I know you're quite senior, because I know that you've been given the responsibility and quite an important KPI there. But if you're a credit controller who just has, part of a ledger, and your responsibility is just to generally make sure people pay on time, and you're not measured on debtor days, you're probably more junior. So knowing how your role's measured tells me a little bit about how senior you are and a bit more about the scope of your role. Then you would have the traditional duties and responsibilities. You all know that needs to go in there. And then reason for leaving. Yeah. If you've been in a role for less than 18 months, explain why you left that role, because people will assume that you are guilty until proven innocent. The point being is if you left after a short space of time, they'll assume there were performance-related issues unless you tell them differently. So I always recommend that you put in there a reason for leaving. So this is what some of these might look like. So summary of role. You might put something like this: hired to manage the finance team with responsibility for producing all accounts to trial balance as well as management accounts for the board. Yeah, so it's kind of like a summary of the role. That's exactly what it is. It's kind of like an overview of what you do. In a nutshell, this is my job. Yeah, and then the next part is your KPIs. The structure of your team. So you might say something like this: manage 10 finance staff with 3 direct reports, including a sales ledger supervisor, a purchase ledger supervisor, and a credit controller. If we know that, we can almost picture your world in our head. It helps us to conceptualize the role better. And then how is your role measured? If you say that your KPI is focused on producing on-time and accurate accounts, as well as ensuring debtor days remain within company guidelines, again, that tells us a little bit about how your role is measured, helps us to understand your role better. I call those the description of the employee, the summary of the role, the structure of the team, and your KPIs. They're the 4 context-building bullet points that bring the duties and responsibilities and achievements into context. Now, let's not beat about the bush here. Achievements are absolutely critical. The achievements are the most important thing. I tell people that if you don't have achievements on your CV, it's a little bit like having a car with no petrol in it. It's not going anywhere. Far, far too many people don't put achievements on their CV. And that's why employers don't know whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, because how would they know if you don't tell them? So the achievements are really, 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 really important. Okay? Okay, good. Now, the guys over at the IAB, they sort of twisted our arm and they said to us, look, obviously you guys are going to talk about your services in this webinar, which we would fully expect you to do, and we're quite cool about that, but we want you to give our members a really fantastic, juicy, amazing, brilliant discount. So we've done that, but I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes telling you what we do. Now, just stick around, guys, because there's loads of stuff to come, but I'm just going to give you a very, very quick description of our service. So, of course, we create CVs that significantly increase interviews. Absolutely. What we do is we match you up with somebody that understands accountancy and bookkeeping. They've probably been senior in their own career. And what we do is discuss with you and sanitize your career direction. So, we talk to you about what you want to achieve in your career so that the CV is supporting that. We help define your value proposition, all that stuff we talked about in the summary. We talk about your key skills. We talk about your achievements and your case studies. We write them for you. We help quantify the results of them. And we write your CV pretty much from scratch. And it's all about maximizing your marketability to employers. And guys, what we do does really, really work. I can't emphasize that enough. The IAB and all the other organizations that we do webinars for and that we talk to their members, they wouldn't use us if we didn't deliver on what we told people we delivered on. And we absolutely have a money back guarantee as well. So, we're really confident that what we do really works for people. And actually, stick around to the end because I'm going to offer, this sounds crazy, I'm going to offer £155 worth of free services and discounts, okay? So stick around and we'll talk about that at the end. I must be crazy, but there you go. Okay, earlier career. So why have I got a picture of the 80s here? Is this Madonna? I think this is Madonna. I don't know who this is. Is this someone with a mustache? This might be Greece. I'm not sure. But anyway, this is the 80s. What I'm trying to say here is you only need to focus on the last 8 to 10 years or the last 4 jobs, okay? Don't go back to the 80s. You don't need to. People just aren't interested in stuff back to the 80s. So to have an earlier career section, just put the dates, the month, the name of your employer and the job title. That's all you need, okay? People who operate as a contractor or an interim or a temp, all I want to say is you probably need a slightly different format, and you might need to talk to me offline, all right? I'm just going to go to my CV, and I'm going to show you the section I'm referring to. This is the earlier career section here, okay? There you go. You can all see it now. I can tell that 100% of you are looking at the earlier career section on there. So that's all you need to do. Just put the dates, name of your employer. You should put the months. I haven't, but you should. Name of your employer and your job title, okay? And that's all you need to do with all that earlier stuff that's more than 10 years ago, because people really aren't that interested in stuff that's so long ago. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation, shall we? Here's an interesting statistic, guys. All right. I said to you earlier that people are cottoning on to this idea of having a CV professionally written. They're more than cottoning on. This is a very, very growth industry. In the US, you know, it's the done thing. In the UK, it's becoming the done thing. And it's kind of like, ooh, if I don't have a professionally written CV, how am I going to compete with the people that do? I would say conservatively, at this point in time, that approximately 10% of all applicants have a professionally written CV. So we haven't got so many people on tonight, but we do these webinars sometimes to hundreds of people. We did one recently where we took 25 orders from people who had watched the webinar and thought, oh gosh, yeah, you know what? That sounds like a fantastic idea. I'm really keen to get as many interviews as possible. I really want to push on with my career, or I'm unemployed and I really need a job. And every day that I'm not in a job is costing me hundreds of pounds. So a lot of people decide that it's a great idea to buy a professionally written CV, and they see our formula. Makes absolute sense. It looks a million miles better than their own CV, and they invest. And that's what people do now. So I reckon probably at least 5 people for each job you apply for have a super duper fantastic professionally written CV. The truth of the matter is that you're going to struggle to compete with them if you don't. So again, just some food for thought. Okay, let's move on now. Qualifications, and I call this CPD. CPDs, training courses. The only point I want to make here is that you need to put your education, your professional qualifications, and your training courses. A lot of people will do the first 2, but not training courses. And it's really important that you do, because people value training courses very much. Employers like that stuff. But if you didn't go to a red brick university or you didn't go to a posh school, don't worry about putting that on there. You don't need to put the dates on there. That just gives away your age, okay? But what you need to do is put your education, put grades on there, put your professional qualifications, training courses. Even if it was just a half-day internal course, put that on there. Don't need to worry about your university or your school unless it was a high-profile one, and you don't need to put the dates on there, okay? That's all I want to say on that. I think I've just dropped in a little testimonial at the bottom of the page there. And by the way, guys, today is all about teaching you guys how to sell yourselves in the job market. So I don't make any apologies for selling what we do, okay? Because it's all about selling yourself. It's all about getting out there. It's important in this day and age to be competitive, and if you're not, you won't get anywhere. There you go. But right, let's move on. Where are we next? Personal details. Okie dokie. So this goes at the back end of the CV. A lot of people, and I bet half of you guys out there, if not more, will have all your personal details on page 1. Name, telephone number, email address, your home address, your national insurance number, how many pets you've got, how many children you've got, are you divorced, are you a smoker, have you got good health? Forget it, guys. just put a very simple section, have your name at the top with 2 telephone numbers, mobile and landline. It could potentially have an email there, but the rest of it, just put at the back of the CV, you know. No good marketing copy would have all those contact details at the top of the advert, because no one would read the damn advert if it did. So you put it at the back because we're using marketing principles, and the stuff that we talked about in the professional summary is a lot more important than the fact that you live on, you know, 12 Fuzzy Tree Avenue or whatever it is. Okay. Driving license. People want to know whether you can drive or not. That's important. Put that on there. Are you mobile? Where in the country will you work? Do you have security clearance? What languages do you speak? What is your eligibility to work in the UK or whichever other country you might want to work in? And there's some more feedback. This is I love this bit of feedback. This was a customer that emailed us a couple of weeks ago who'd written their CV, and we sent it to them on Friday, and they emailed us on Tuesday to say that they'd had more calls and emails since uploading their CV at the weekend than they'd had in the last 6 weeks. So fantastic, you know, that's what happens when people invest in this kind of a thing. So just some general stuff. When you write a CV, you need to write it in what we call a tight writing style. So you can drop sometimes where you put an a or a the or an an, you can drop some of those words and use a tight writing style. You write in active tense, so you don't see production of accounts to trial balance. That's just something that happened. You would say produced accounts to trial balanced. You wouldn't say designing of new financial processes. You would say designed new financial processes. It's a more powerful way of writing. It's called active tense. You should also write in the third person, okay? So that means you don't use I and my. I and my are what we call subjective pronouns, okay? You don't use them. You drop them, and that's what writing in the third person. It's almost like someone else is writing about you but not using your name. It's a much more grown-up way of writing. It's not the easiest way to write, but it's a more grown-up way of writing. If you find that hard, I'd rather see your CV written in the first person well than in the third person badly, but it really should be in the third person. Okay, get your spelling right, get your formatting right. I mean, it goes without saying, but so many people get that stuff wrong. I see CVs with inconsistent formatting and spelling errors. You guys are bookkeepers. It's quite a detail-orientated job. You know, and by the way, if any of you have got this stuff in your CV, I'm a dynamic self-starter with excellent attention to detail, who can work well under pressure, who can work well in a team as well as on my own with excellent communication skills. Please remove that now. Just as soon as this session ends, go and delete it entirely from your CV. People hate that stuff. It's awful, cliched, horrible, horrible, nasty, horrible stuff, and people don't respond to it. Now, they may talk about those things in an interview, and if they do, great, and it's good stuff. It's not that the skills themselves aren't worthwhile, it's just they're horrible on a CV. Okay, good. What next? Recommendations. One of my pet subjects here. I don't know whether many of you know about LinkedIn. If you don't, we're going to talk about it in a minute. But recommendations are now really important. On LinkedIn, you would have recommendations, and I would suggest you lift them into your CV. They're not references, what we used to call testimonials, really, but they're kind of like snippets, really, of nice things that people have said about you. LinkedIn has a statistic that you're 3 times more likely to be contacted about a job if you have good recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. So it stands to reason that you might be 3 times more likely to be contacted about a job through your CV if you've got good recommendations on your CV. I mean, what is good, what is bad? If it's like, I've known, you know, Jen for 10 years and she's honest, reliable and trustworthy, forget it. Horrible, horrible, horrible. But if it's like, you know, so-and-so's the best bookkeeper that I've ever employed, they were super duper efficient for 10 years, all the accounts are absolutely bang on, never had any problems, would highly recommend, that sort of thing's really powerful. Now, LinkedIn. I'm just going to cover LinkedIn quickly. What is it? Okay. So actually, let me just go to the questions. Who knows about LinkedIn and who doesn't? Does anybody not know what LinkedIn is? Okay, someone doesn't. No problems. Okay. Rightio, good. Okay, fine. So quite a few of you don't know what LinkedIn started off life as a bit kind of like a professional version of Facebook. Yeah, it's a bit like when I remember when I first left uni and I had a job in sales, and I used to keep all my clients' business cards in a little leather folder type thing, and it was all very nice. I got it for Christmas from my mum and dad, I think, and yeah, it was nice, and quickly ran out and had to get a new one. And then somebody decided that that whole idea of keeping business cards in a manual file is a bit of a daft idea, and because of the wonders of technology, let's create a website that does exactly that, but online. So it started off life as a bit of a kind of online place where you'd put all your business contacts. And you could network with them and talk to them. And, you know, when you needed your accountant, you could contact them through LinkedIn. When you needed to talk to one of your clients, you could contact them through LinkedIn. It was, everybody was in one place. But then all of a sudden, the recruitment industry cottoned on to the fact that all these job seekers were all in one place. Or not necessarily just job seekers, but anybody that might be a professional. And they realized that actually sometimes the best candidates aren't always the job seekers. It might be the ones that are in a job that they can just go and poach. So recruiters started using it as a tool to poach candidates. And now LinkedIn makes 50% of its revenues through giving access to recruitment agencies. They charge recruitment agencies to access LinkedIn, and they make a bomb. And that's what LinkedIn is. It's one massive candidate database, and it's the pond that recruiters fish. So it's absolutely critical that you have a LinkedIn profile if you're looking for a job. And by the way, if you have a LinkedIn profile and you're not necessarily looking for a job, that's fine. It's quite normal to have a LinkedIn profile. It doesn't mean you're a job seeker. It just means that you network, you know, and you have a professional networking presence, if you like. And as you guys don't know much about it, I'm not going to bore you with the headline, summary, positions, and projects. All I'm going to say is there's a certain way it needs to be put together, and there are certain things you need to write in each section, and it kind of follows on from the CV, but you need to write it so that it doesn't feel like you've just regurgitated the CV. But if you don't know what LinkedIn is, it's probably a bit of a bridge too far for me to talk in detail about it. But what I will say is that 85% of people, I'm talking about recruiters and hiring managers, who will put you on their shortlist. So they've looked at your CV, they like the look of you, and they've shortlisted you. They will go and check you out on LinkedIn. Statistically, 85% of those people will go and check you out on LinkedIn. So it's important that you're on there and it's complete and it's well written and it dovetails with your CV, but it doesn't feel like you just regurgitated it. All right. So LinkedIn's really important. You all need a LinkedIn profile if you're looking for a job. But you could also have one if you're not looking for a job, and it might be an idea just to get one anyway so that it doesn't feel like you've just stuck one up there all of a sudden. Okay, so what can we do for you guys? So the IAB guys twisted our arm and said, right, we want a super duper fantastic special offer. So we're going to give you one. So if you order our professional level CV writing service, which is the one I mentioned earlier, okay, we will do that for you. We'll also write you a killer cover letter, a really nice cover letter. And we will also write your LinkedIn profile for you for free. If you've already got one, we'll revamp it for you. So we'll do our pro-level CV service. That's the one where we spend 2 hours talking to you over the phone. That can be done out of hours if need be, or even on a weekend. But we spend 2 hours talking to you. We go through all that stuff that we mentioned throughout the webinar. And we write your CV from scratch. We write you a cover letter, and we do your LinkedIn profile. That's going to cost $250 plus VAT. That is an enormous £155 discount to the nearest 20p. It's 144.80 actually, and I'm sure you bookkeepers will pull me up on that. But it's a whopping £155 discount. It's really good value. It's about a day and a half's work for us. Just in case someone thinks 250 plus VAT is expensive, go and ring up your local cleaning company and say, how much would it cost to get a cleaner in to come and do a day and a half's work cleaning my house? All right, and then you'll soon realize that 250 plus VAT is not expensive for a CV, a LinkedIn profile, and a cover letter, because they are the most important documents that you will ever own if you are serious about growing your career. You can also buy our post-webinar pack for 15 quid plus VAT. So we'll send you a CV template. We'll send you the PowerPoint presentation. We'll also send you a interview coaching ebook, okay, which is fantastic. It's like an interview coaching document which tells you how to improve your interview technique, and that's fantastic in its own right. We'll also give you access to our interview practice platform, which again is absolutely fantastic. You can log in and there are 6,000 questions to choose from, and you can actually set these questions, and through your webcam it interviews you and you deliver your responses through your webcam and it records it and you can play it back. So you can buy all that for 15 quid plus VAT, okay? But it really gives you access to the CV and the PowerPoint slides and all that kind of stuff, which is really, really useful to have. You've got to order before Monday the 11th of November, okay? So that's this Monday coming. And to order, you just need to email us. That's the easiest thing to do. Just email us. So it's our web address with info at the start, info@cvandinterviewadvisors.co.uk. Just email us saying, I was on the webinar last night. I'd like to take advantage of your super duper special offer and or buying the post-webinar pack, and just say you're on the AIB webinar and we'll know exactly what to do. Make sure you put your telephone number in there and then we'll call you to progress your order. So dead easy, really straightforward. But just to reinforce the point, and I'm going to do a Q&A in a minute, guys, but just to reinforce the point, what we do really works. For anybody that's serious about their career, you just got to do it. It's a no-brainer. And also we offer a money-back guarantee. So if you order and then you think, okay, you know, it's not for me before we started work, we'll give you your money back. If we go through the entire process and you're not happy with it, you're just not happy, and we'll talk about it, of course, and make sure that everything's in order. But, you know, if you're genuinely not happy, then, you know, we don't want people being unhappy. So we have a money-back guarantee. But we're that confident you will be, we're happy to do that. So that's what we can do. So I'm going to just now take some questions, all right? So this is our new system. So I've not done the question bit before. I don't think anyone's used the chat, but I'm going to do the questions now. So do you guys want to just put any questions in the question box, and I'll answer them for you and see whether or not we can just cover off anything that anybody has to ask. And by the way, if you haven't got any questions and you want to shoot off and go and do what you need to do on a Wednesday night, feel free. But I'm going to stick around and see what people have got to ask me. What do you mean by SEO? Someone's asked me. SEO is search engine optimization. It's what people in the marketing world use to get websites further up the Google rankings. They call it search engine optimization, and all I'm doing is drawing a parallel between getting a website further up the search engine rankings to getting a CV further up the searching when people are searching on databases. Yeah, so it's all about having keywords in your CV. So that was that second section we talked about that we call key skills. Great stuff. Someone saying, will I need a different CV for each job? Yes and no. It depends on how different the jobs are. If you are, say, for example, somebody that could be, I don't know, like just say I'd done a CV for somebody myself who was like, they were like in accountancy, but they're also really good with IT, and they could probably be a project manager, project managing the delivery of like IT projects within an accountancy environment, or they could be an accountant. They could do one or the other. So for that person, we would probably create 2 CVs because they're quite different areas. But for a lot of people, you just need to tweak your CV to make sure that you're making it obvious that you've got the key skills that they're looking for in that job spec. So you might make little adjustments to the professional summary. You might put different things in the key skills. You might reorder the career highlights and make sure that the bullet points in the career history match up with the requirements of the role on the job specification. I think that covered off the next question I had there as well. Someone's saying all my experience is abroad because I am what's happened there? Screen sharing is now paused. We don't want to pause that, do we? No. Hopefully you're all still there. Yeah, I think you're all still there. Okay, someone's asking me that they've got a lot of experience not from the UK, it's all from abroad. How do you deal with my qualifications? How can I specify what I am? Well, I think that if your qualifications are non-UK qualifications, what you're going to do is find out what UK qualification it's equivalent to, just put the name of your qualification and then put in brackets that it is equivalent to blah, 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 blah. So say somebody is an accountant and they've got the CPA qualification, you'd probably put in brackets that this is an international qualification similar to ACCA, for example. But the fact that all your experience is outside of the UK, there's not really much you can do with that, to be honest. You know, it is as it is, and you can't change that. Someone's saying, what if you're just starting out in your career and you've got limited experience? You've just finished university. Okay, that's a great question. Well, what you do is you remember the career highlights question, the career highlights section. What you do is you would expand out that, and you would fill that with case studies, maybe 4 or 5, that prove that you've got the transferable skills that you need to be an accountant. So, for example, you might want to have a case study that proves that you've got project management skills, another case study that proves you've got an awareness of financial and economic principles. Another skill might be giving a case study that proves you've got some commercial awareness. What you do is you pick things that you've done in your career, in work, or things you've done at university, so projects at university, or extracurricular things that you've done that prove that you have those skills. So, I mean, I remember doing a CV for a medical graduate who we decided that he needed to demonstrate that he could work in a pressurized environment, ideally a pressurized medical environment. So I said, what have you done that proves this? And he couldn't think. And then in the end, he came up with this great example of when he'd been driving home one day and 3 cars in front of him had a crash on a country lane. And he jumped out and looked after all the injured people, called the emergency services, and then got like some kind of commendation from the fire service. It made a fantastic case study that proved that this guy can handle an emergency medical situation. So you've got to be creative. Now, some people are a bit closer to what they need to demonstrate. I had a graduate who wanted to go into business, so we decided it would be a good idea to prove they had good commercial awareness. So we did a case study about them buying some bankrupt stock from the back of the classified section in the newspaper and then setting up a market stall for £12 and selling this bankrupt stock and turning a 50 quid profit all in one day. You know, it made a lovely case study, and it proved that she had good commercial awareness, and they're really powerful. So that's the kind of thing you want to do in a graduate CV. We've got a fantastic graduate CV format that really gets results for people, and it's just an absolute must investment, because I spoke to someone the other day who'd invested 20 grand in qualifying, and they had a rubbish CV, and I just said to them, you know, bottom line is that 20 grand is utterly pointless. You're not going to get any return on that investment unless you sort your CV out, because 92% of hiring decisions or shortlisting decisions are made on your CV. So you could be the best 20 grand, you know, the best graduate out there that's just spent 20 grand on your qualifications. But if you've got a CV, it's all pointless, isn't it? So, you know, 20 grand, 250 quid, bit of a no-brainer really. And they saw it that way. Somebody's saying that they've got qualifications in finance, but have worked in the childcare sector. what would be our advice? Well, really, it's a question of finding those transferable skills and doing a CV similar to how I described you should do it if you're a graduate. It's all about identifying the transferable skills, trying to find some evidence that you've got them, and using the case studies to do that. Lewis, I think it is, he's saying that they're going to take up our offer, which is great. Thank you. Will the payment need to be made by the 11th? Yeah, so what happens is contact us, email us on that email address. We'll contact you to take the payment. That needs to be done by the 11th. But if you want to use the service a couple of months down the line, that's fine. In fact, we had somebody once pay for our service because they wanted the webinar special offer, and then they came back to us about 12 months later, which is fine. We don't mind. But yeah, you need to order and pay the money before the 11th in order to get the super duper amazing discount. So look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Someone's saying, what if they'd spent a long time in one career such as print estimating and are just moving on to bookkeeping? Yeah, I'd need to look at that CV, and I'd need to see how much of your print career was accountancy related. We might be able to just sort of bend it and shape it so that it looks like, I mean, we spoke to somebody recently who they ordered our service, and I looked at their CV, and what had happened is that they had a dual role as an operations manager and a kind of finance assistant. Yeah, so it was like bookkeeping and operations management. And what we needed to do was figure out which of those routes they wanted to go down, and that would tell us what kind of slant we put on the CV. If they wanted to go into the accountancy arena, the summary would have focused on accounts, the career highlights on accounts, and all the duties and responsibilities and bullet points in the career history on accounts, or vice versa if they wanted to go down the ops route. If you don't have an awful lot of experience doing accountancy related or bookkeeping related stuff, then we might need to revert to the what I described as the graduate, or what we call a career changer style CV, where we have more than 3 case studies on page 1 and focus on transferable skills. Okay, what else have we got that I haven't already answered? Somebody's saying they're currently studying. Should they put that on their CV? Yeah, I think I'm getting that right. What you need to do is to put on the CV that you're doing the exam and that you're currently studying it. That's the best thing to say. Someone's saying, is there a way to spread the cost of the CV? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really low offer. So what we normally do is ask people to pay for that up front. But if you contact me offline, we'll give you a call and we'll see what we can work out for you and see whether or not we can't come up with something that that works for you. You know, we want to be flexible. If people genuinely want to take the offer but just have budgetary constraints, you know, we're happy to be flexible. We actually genuinely quite passionate about what we do and wanting to help people. So give us a shout. Email me and just remind me you were the person that had the query about the payment, and I'll give you a call and we'll see what we can work out. Okay. Okay, what else have we got here? Someone's saying that after my course ends in June, I'm still studying but aim to get a job after my course ends in June, but we'll start studying further. So I guess CV now and CV after further studying. Well, I don't know. I mean, the studying bit's quite easy to just add on. You know, once you get a new qualification, you just add on. I mean, it's just a question of adding an extra line in the qualifications section. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Okay, what else have we got? Yeah, there we go. I think I've got to the end of the questions there, actually. So that's great. Brilliant. I think I'm there. Fantastic. Guys, you've been great. It's been a really good bunch to have on. Really enjoyed it. This is the first time we've done about 100 webinars on a different webinar platform. This is the first time we've actually used GoToWebinar. So there's a couple of little glitches there, so sorry about that. But I hope you enjoyed it. You know, it's great talking to people. I love accountancy. It's something I was involved with for about 6 years, and you know, bookkeeping. I used to run a temp desk, and I used to have loads of bookkeepers temping, and it was a great period of my career. So, you know, thanks ever so much, guys. I'm going to end the webinar now. If you got any questions, just email us. Of course, there's a few people already who want to take up the offer, so we'll be hearing from you soon, and then we'll give you a call. But have yourselves a great night, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. All right, guys, cheers.